This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. And today, Tom, we have a special guest with us, Miss Danielle Elia. Hello, Danielle. How are you?
Hi.
So Danielle is my roommate, although she abandoned me this year, but she's spiritually still my roommate in school.
Smart person.
Not cool, Tom. Not cool.
Horses beyond my control.
Nonetheless, Miss Danielle is a fellow history teacher, and she's like the guru of world history at our school. She's a guru of everything. Who am I kidding? But world history is more her jam than myself, I have to admit. I mean, Tom, I don't know about you, but world history has never been my forte.
You don't think you ever taught it, right?
Me? I taught it once.
A long time ago.
Like 16 years ago. Dang it.
We always said we're trying to do more world history stuff and wind up just going to like the War of 1812 or something instead.
I know, which actually
This is good. This is good.
This is good.
We're sticking to what we picked.
And no one is literally listening to War of 1812. it's like, yeah, we're just going to skip this one. I'm like, okay, fine, jerks. Anyway, so
Forgotten War.
Yeah, Forgotten War. That's right. We're going to keep it that way. So today we're going to have a conversation about Henry VIII and his 6 wives. And I really brushed up on this stuff. And I know, Danielle, you teach a lesson about this stuff, don't you?
Yes. Several times I've taught it. So the interesting thing is every time you look up something or research, there's new information that pops up. So
interesting.
Like a never ending story.
So I think I was gonna kind of start off a little bit about like Henry VIII, just like what do we know about Henry VIII, and then we'll run through like just chronologically through run through his wives. That sounds really bad. Go over his marriages. Ta-da! Right, that sounds good.
Perfect.
Okay. So apparently, first of all, I know apparently Henry VIII. You always see that painting of him like that, big, over 6 foot tall, really fluffy guy. But apparently, he was like in really good shape when he was younger. Everywhere I'm reading, they're saying he was, really into sports and exercise and like super handsome. And then when he passed away, he was like 400 pounds and needed a special mechanical something to help lift him on his horse. And so, his life's definitely changed a little bit.
Yeah. And it was an exaggerated change too, because he was like a model of fitness as a young man. And he really did enjoy playing tennis and having tournaments and all of that fun stuff.
I thought it was jousting too. Tennis? Really?
Yeah, tennis.
Yeah, jousting, I saw that. He liked the hawking, right? Like sitting, that whole thing.
But tennis, I didn't know tennis was around. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, inside. They played indoor in the courts. Oh. So even when the French Revolution comes around, right, and we're like, tennis court, like they went to the tennis court. You always have to remind people it's inside. But he had a jousting accident, and he has an ulcer in his leg after a certain point that continues to be infected and inflamed throughout the rest of his life. And that's attributing to some of the weight gain and possibly coupled with diabetes, obesity, and vein issues. So,
and I also read that they say that, historians are trying to figure out whether the jousting accident actually left him with some form of brain damage that made him like a little obsessive compulsive. But there's no studies that definitely prove that. But like sometimes people say that like he might have had a slight personality change after this particular accident. But I think when this accident happened, he was already a couple of wives in because his wife had a miscarriage when he fell off, right? This jousting accident, because she was like freaked out about it. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I thought that was the thing.
There's a lot of miscarriages. So not the first wife though.
And it was not. Yeah, that's what I thought. What else do we know about Henry VIII? That's kind of
Well, they were talking about his health. I was reading a lot that he was a hypochondriac. He was obsessed with like, at least younger in life, like staying healthy.
Yeah.
Like if anyone around him ever got sick, he just refused. He like wouldn't go near him. He did that with Anne Boleyn. He like stay away from her when she got sick in the 1520s. I saw that he would let ambassadors come in like during sicknesses and during plague outbreaks and stuff like that. He would leave London for nearly a year because he just was wanted to make sure he wouldn't get these diseases. He was so worried about it, even though obviously later on in life he just put on a massive amount of weight. He just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
As far as he stayed away from sickness, but he wasn't trying to keep himself in shape anymore.
I also saw that he was like really paranoid of sweating sickness. I've never even heard of
that
sweating
was a big
sickness
thing.
until I started doing this research. I'm like, sweating sickness.
Yes. See, that's the world history stuff that you miss out on.
Yeah.
Very common back in the day.
I got to stop by your class more often. I'm like, so literally, I'm like sweating sickness. So I started like Googling that, and it's like like what happens in a sweating sickness? But obviously, you sweat.
There's still a lot of questions around what some of these diseases typically or actually were, but they would be characterized by their symptoms sometimes, and it was pretty much high fever and sweating.
Yeah.
So
How original. Did you guys see that he was actually an author?
Yeah.
Like apparently he wrote a book.
Pages, yeah. Well, it was a response to what was the response to Martin Luther, right?
Yep, Martin Luther.
Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he said that like he was defended, right, the sacraments or something.
He was supporting the church in Rome, yeah, the defense of the seven sacraments.
That's ironic.
Well, when they suited him,
yeah. He was very much Catholic throughout most of his life in his beliefs, and he did study a lot of theology, and he was a very big advocate of quoting parts of the Bible later on in life. But although some of his actions don't necessarily line up with the Pope, they're very much going to be following Catholic traditions and sacraments and so forth.
Going along with that, I also read that he was fluent in like 3 languages, or fluent in 2. I think it was Latin, right, French, and he also spoke a little bit of Italian. He was already born a monarch, basically, so I guess you would have really good education, stemming from that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't primed for the throne, but he definitely was well educated and did take to his studies quite frequently as a child.
I think that's an awesome segue too, because like you said, he wasn't primed for the throne, and that kind of really starts off like an introduction to his first wife, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, let's go there.
Right. So let's go there. All right. So his first wife was Catherine of Aragon, right?
Yes.
But actually, she was not first his wife. So you want to get into that?
Sure.
All right, go.
I'll start with it. So we all know about Christopher Columbus, right? And how he ends up going to Spain and getting sponsored to go seek a trade route to the New World, or really to the Spice Islands. Mm-hmm. This is the same Isabella and Ferdinand that end up having children. And their youngest, I believe it was the youngest, Catherine of Aragon, is going to be promised at a very young age. She's betrothed to Arthur of Wales, and he is the oldest of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York to take the throne when it gets passed on. And do you want me to keep going? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell. Yeah, you're on fire right here.
This is my first time, so I wasn't sure. Stop or like shut up.
No, go for it. Go for it.
No, this is good. Go ahead, Danielle.
Okay, so Catherine of Aragon, a lot of people talking about her fierceness, her beauty, and she knows that her and Arthur are going to be married, and that was like their destiny, and she was going to be the Queen of England, hopefully, if everything worked out. She also came with a massive dowry, which there's a little bit, a little bit going back and forth of like, where did the money go when she does show up to England? But when she's there, they get married, and he was more sickly. All right, I think it was sweating sickness yet again, hitting 6 months after their wedding night. And after that, it comes out that apparently they did not consummate the marriage.
Yeah, that came up. That was like a big deal, right?
Yeah, and
later on,
there were, like her like pretty much her lady in waiting, or her helper. I don't want to say necessarily servant, because there's a different term, I think, for Spanish. They're your servant that help you do like get dressed and bathe you and get your food and make sure you show up to appointments and go seek you when people need you. But also vouched that the marriage was not consummated. So is this something where she's just trying to save her future and set it, in a direction where she'll stay in England and not get sent back to what was Spain, and have a lot of uncertainty over her head, right? Or did it actually not happen? So we probably will never know.
But it does come up later, right? Because she is right after that. She's basically offered, right, to Henry VIII, like the younger brother. So while Henry VIII marries her, so he's essentially marrying his brother's widow. But he eventually, when he, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but when he wants a divorce from her, he says he wants it because he believed that the marriage was consummated. Correct?
Correct. So he's going to be advocating to get married to her after his brother dies. He
Mm-hmm.
knows he's going to be the future king of England. There is a role that his father, Henry VII, might have pushed for this marriage to
Mm-hmm.
actually happen because the dowry did not fully show up yet
Yeah.
and they needed money. Because you have to remember at this point, when we're looking at world powers, especially in Europe, Spain's higher up than England is. So England does need to make sure they're not going to go back into another civil war like the War of the Roses. They want more stability. They have enemies also looking for territory, especially like France is always dicey between England and France, like who's going to take over Calais. And this is something where, that would really be to the advantage if they could have some more financial security. So it doesn't happen overnight, though. It takes years to have this marriage go through.
Yeah. Because Henry VIII took the throne, so this is early 1500s, like 1509. He was only 17. I believe she wasn't she older than him, Catherine, when they got married? I want to say she was.
Yes.
And they also say, based on my research, that it seems like, at least from historians believe, right, that this is the one that he actually like loved.
They were pretty
They,
madly in
yeah.
love at the
They said
beginning.
that he actually cared for all of his wives, like when he was with them. He would call them sweetheart and stuff like that. It was really just when he got bored with them or fall in love with them, then he just cut them off. He just abandoned them as
Literally
if they
cut him
never
off.
existed.
Get it.
Well, yeah, a
Right.
couple of them did get things cut off, yeah. But a lot of them, yeah, but they said that, Catherine of Aragon was the one he probably loved the most. But he was married with her to the longest time, right? Like 23
It was
years.
23 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was several decades. And that's the thing. Like you go through some of these other wives that we'll talk about in a few
They're
minutes.
fast.
And yeah, like maybe only a couple months and peace out. But they had a really long and strong relationship. Like she was one of his closest political advisors as well. It only starts to come after some of the miscarriages and lack of having a son that he starts to then quote, I think it was Leviticus in the Bible, along the lines of, if you marry your brother's wife, you're not going to have children, pretty much, which she did have a child. They had a child together. Mary.
Yep.
Mary, we all know Queen Mary the First of England, also nicknamed Bloody Mary, right? Like she's gonna show up if you say her name in the mirror 3 times, and right, like all the Halloween things that you
Yeah.
hear with the wives' tales. But
But she was one of six, was it? I mean, technically, Catherine was pregnant 6 times. Mary's just the
yes,
only one that lived, right?
but every time, especially one of the later miscarriages, she miscarried a boy, and they could tell it was a boy.
Yeah.
So now he's thinking like, all right, well, is this because of what, like I've sinned pretty much? Remember, he's a very
Very religious,
devout
yeah.
and pious Catholic at this point, and she's also the face of, right? Like she, in the family, it was uncle, then nephew, Holy Roman Emperor. So you also had a reputation to uphold there
Yeah.
on her behalf.
All right. So what happens here? So basically, he gets to be he becomes slightly paranoid about the fact he doesn't have this male heir, and but also at this time, while he's married to Catherine, he does technically have a male heir, which is just an illegitimate child, right? Because in 1519, I'm pretty sure he gets what's Elizabeth Bessie Blount something pregnant, and Henry Fitzroy is technically King Henry VIII's only acknowledged illegitimate child as far as history knows.
Yeah, there's probably a few others, but he's acknowledged one. There was even talk at one time, right, of him legitimizing him, so because he wanted that male heir so bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and Mary was actually supportive of that, saying like, yes, you can actually name him a successor if that would, help you out in our position, as a unified England.
Yeah.
And
That
she
probably
was,
would have been challenged, right? Like a lot. There would have been factions that didn't want because he was a bastard, basically.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, born out of wedlock, did not have as what could be seen as divine right being passed down, being chosen by God to rule. And that was something a lot of people did take serious that were in power, right? So like if you start that trend in England, is that going to carry over to another nation? And
Yeah.
what kind of, issues could that open up for other kingdoms?
So let's go to the Boleyn. Boleyn, am I saying that right? Boleyn, right?
Anne Boleyn
Boleyn. Yeah, I knew it
and
was wrong.
Mary.
Well, before Boleyn, wasn't it Mary first? Because he was
Mary.
hooking up with Mary, who was Anne's
Yeah.
sister, and
Yep.
they were both technically the ladies in waiting, like you said, like the not servants, but for Catherine. So first, apparently he had sex with Mary, and then like kind of just like pushed her aside and was like, yeah, okay, I'm done there. Which is why Anne was like, I will not go to bed with you until or unless you actually like court me and marry me.
Yeah. They both were educated at French court, how to flirt and pretty much like have people in your favor, right? Like women training other women how to get attention and hopefully use that to raise your social status in society or keep your status. And Mary got like the short end of the stick there because she did have, several affairs with the king. She was considered a mistress for a while. She was the prettier one in a lot of people's eyes. But it ended with her pretty much being forced out of court and marrying kind of like beneath her
Status?
socioeconomic
Yeah.
class. Yeah, beneath her status. And there was a rumor that the child that she was pregnant with was actually Henry VIII's and not her actual husband. So was that part of the reason why she got pushed out and had to marry so quickly? We probably won't know. But if you're Anne and you're watching this, like you don't want that to happen to you too, especially if you want to stay in the favor of the king.
Yeah.
So she's like, nope, you can't touch me. And she was a big flirt for years.
Yeah, and that really drove him nuts. Like he attracted him even more to her, from what I was reading too. Right,
Yeah.
the fact that she was resisting his advances. That's why he's like, I have to get divorced from.
He literally
Yeah.
changes history for this girl.
Well, Anne was a lot younger too, right? Wasn't she only like 25
Yeah.
when they met?
Yes. And, it's going to be a hard reputation because most of Henry's friends too are like, okay, like, it's one thing if it's going to be a mistress, but like if you're actually serious about this, like that's a whole different can of worms here.
Yeah.
And even when they do end up husband and wife, it's something where the only thing that's really protecting her in the eyes of the public is the king. Nobody really in support of Anne being the queen, and they called her the Great Pretender, a succubus. That she bewitched him. So there's some really harsh, trolls out there for that time, giving her some flack.
So things kind of basically just kind of sum it up a little bit. He winds up asking for a divorce from the Pope, from Catherine. Well, not from the Pope. You know what I mean. The Pope says no. And then he says, you know what, forget it. And winds up basically disattaching England from, right, the Catholic Church, creates the Church of England, and gets his divorce from Catherine, which on the basis, apparently, that she did consummate the marriage with his brother, therefore making his marriage not pure and therefore like illegal. So then he marries Anne, and things are supposedly going well for Anne, except there's obviously one problem with Anne. What's the problem, guys?
She's not giving him that male heir, right?
Exactly. She gives him a daughter, right?
Which turns out to be Elizabeth, right? That's Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth the First. And I just want to point something out, Pete, that you just said, which is something where I don't want to get like too technical, but everybody's like, oh, he got divorced. But technically he asks for an annulment, which is
as if it never happened.
Yeah, it was like illegal grounds of getting married because he's like, no, she, consummated the marriage with my brother. And now he's paranoid that maybe he's been sinning and keeps throwing it back on Catherine to push for the annulment. And the Pope's not granting it. And here's the thing, the Pope might actually have agreed, but Clement is in a bad position because he's the Pope. And this is the niece. I'm sorry. At this point, it's Catherine of Aragon's nephew is the Holy Roman Emperor. So you're like the king, the politician enforcing this religious rule. It's going to be a bad look. So he doesn't want to cross somebody that he's really good, allies with.
Yeah. No, interesting.
Yeah. And then
everyone's related to somebody else during this time. I feel all the major
yeah,
players are all
we're not
they're
even
all
touching what
somehow
happened.
the DNA is everywhere.
Yeah.
But what
Sorry.
happens to Anne? So Anne doesn't give him the heir that he wants. He gets Elizabeth, and this is where it kind of gets a little twisted, right? Because based on everything that I'm reading, it seems like he actually like. I mean, you obviously know more about this. Was she cheating on him, or was that just rumors that he used as like a pretext to, get her beheaded, basically?
Yeah, she was probably the target of false claims all around. But remember, let's go back to her reputation. She wasn't really favored.
Yeah.
She is going to have to help him now run this Church of England Anglican Church because, since the Pope wasn't giving him the annulment, he's like, forget you. And it's really the seat, the Holy See. It's the diplomatic position that the Pope occupies, not necessarily being the leader of the religious views. So Henry is now going to be the leader of the Church of England, the Anglican Church, and he gets to choose what goes and what doesn't go. And the thing is, Anne's going to jump on board with that. So when you have this new religious change take over, she's also going to be the face of part of that change. She's already going to get a tough time from the public. Now, they might have gotten married secretly in a ceremony, which wasn't so unheard of, but she is probably going to get pregnant before they're publicly officially married. And that's just speculation that there was a secret marriage, but you wait years, you're holding off, you're flirting with him, you're so close to getting married. What's the point of, kind of going against that in the public eye?
Yeah.
And she has a girl. So we just talked about Elizabeth. She has a girl, but then she gets pregnant a couple more times, and then she ends up, having miscarriages or stillborns, and they're boys, so they can tell the gender. And now Henry's thinking, "Oh my gosh, is this like, am I cursed again? Is it because of this woman that?" Like I'm getting lured. Maybe she did bewitch me. And he's starting to get very, very paranoid about that. So there were stories that she was pregnant, she lost the baby, she was all of a sudden pregnant again. And, the incest could have been her brother trying to get her re-pregnant. There was a rumor about that.
I did read that.
So that was one of the things that got her eventually killed, right?
They threw her in a Tower of London. Incest
and treason.
Yep.
That she was plotting with her
brother.
Her brother and other people, and other people to overthrow the king. But they said that a lot of that evidence, there wasn't really a lot of facts to any of that.
Right. It was not.
It was more Thomas Cromwell going after her, right?
Yeah. And you have to remember too, like there's a lot of people having their own agendas influencing the king. I don't like this person, I like this person, and help in his ear.
Yeah.
Finding
and he's just interested in having a son. So if he'll get rid of her and get another girl, he just wants a son.
Yeah, but how he got rid of her is like, what? I mean,
he said once he was done with them, he was done with them. Like he didn't care.
She was beheaded. Like there was a trial of 2,000 people attend this trial.
But that's also how things worked back then. They behead you. We used to pump people full of electricity.
Well,
now we stick them with needles. Like it's always going to be something different. You're going to use laser beams one day.
I mean, there is a nice little tribute of her, with a glass pillow at the Tower of London, even currently today, commemorating, I guess, the execution of Anne. But he did show a little bit of remorse. And she was like, listen, at one point you did love me. Can you just remember that it was somewhere in your heart? And please get a good executioner, because she didn't want it to be bloodbath. And I think we kind of forget that in modern terms. Like you're saying, like, yeah, we electrocuted people and so forth. But, you're hoping, if anybody's ever swung an axe, I love how in movies you like pick up an axe, like they're chopping firewood and it's like one hit and the thing completely not to get too grotesque, but you don't want to have the executioner swing and not kill you the first time.
Or like hit a shoulder or something. My bad. Oh man,
and then
that's so wrong.
Pull it out and swing again. So he hired a top-notch executioner. She was very thankful for that. She's like, I got a small neck, so it should be no problem here.
Jesus.
And that was, how she met her end. And all of this is happening, and Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen of England, that's not there yet, that we all know, for like the Shakespearean period, she's watching all of this play out publicly between mommy and daddy, and she's only like 4 or 5 years old. Like, she's pretty young.
Nuts. Well, that's also a perfect segue. She's also watching the fact that literally the day after Anne's execution, right, Henry becomes engaged to Jane Seymour the next day. And they get married 10 days after that. Like, come on. Like, Henry was already, like, he was ready. He had this lined up.
He had it. Well, yeah, he was moving on. Why?
Well, yeah, but a day later? What? So, number 3, Jane Seymour. Okay. What do we know about Jane Seymour? Actually, from what I understand, she formed a very close relationship with Mary, Mary the first, from Catherine's daughter, and apparently helped like mend the relationship between Henry and Mary. Because after when he was married to Anne, he basically said, "All right, my daughter Mary from my first marriage," like he just kind of signed her off, says she's not part of this, she's not getting anything in this, and he basically said the line of succession would go to Elizabeth. And this is the beginning of him kind of reconciling with Mary through his third wife, Jane. She does give birth to a boy.
Yeah,
we need to
Edward.
Acknowledge that. Yes. Edward, later Edward VI. But Edward does not fare so well in his life. Although he outlives his father. We know that much. But Edward dies, I want to say like 6 years or something after Henry dies, when he's still a teenager.
I think they saw that. There's still, I don't know. I saw a bunch of different things on why he probably died.
Well, speculation. I've seen everything from sweating sickness to...
Yeah, it's fever and cough, basically. Kidney failure, measles, smallpox. They have no idea what he could have had.
When he was sick, like, even as a child and a baby, and going back to Henry being a hypochondriac, he sent him out of the Tower of London, the palace, pretty much, to another location where they would scrub the walls and clean the sheets and literally try to sanitize everything the best that they knew how to at that time, to keep him healthy and alive.
Nuts. But what they couldn't keep, or rather whom they couldn't keep alive, was Jane herself. I mean, she was dead 2 weeks after giving birth, right? Or actually 2 weeks after the christening, Edward's christening. That's what it was. And it said it was probably because of complications from the birth. So he did not stay married to Jane for too long.
No, but he did say he suffered a lot of grief from that. Like, he was generally upset the fact that...
Well, she gave him the son, right?
Yeah, so he was... Yeah, he wasn't really tied with her yet, I guess, if you're going to look at it from how everything else worked. And she was the only one that received a queen's burial. And he actually, when he died, he was buried next to her, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
because she gave him the heir, right?
She got him what he wanted, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and he requested that too, to be buried next to her. Unlike Anne, she's like buried and her head didn't fit in the coffin like straight, so they had like put it next to her.
Oh,
that's very opposite. It's very opposite there.
She's like holding her head so bad.
That's a lot. There's a lot.
You guys are not inviting me back after this one.
No, this is great.
This is nothing new.
Oh, please. All right, Anne. So then he moves on to another Anne. That's his second Anne, but we are now on the fourth wife. So Anne of Cleves, right?
This was a quick one.
Yeah, it's not, but I'm going to let you guys talk first because there's some new theories that have emerged.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Well, she was never crowned, right? She was never actually crowned the queen. She just was married supposedly for just 6 months, but I guess there's some other stuff with that.
Well, that's because he thought she was better looking. Did you hear that whole story? So basically, he was a bachelor for 2 years, right? And it was his chief minister that suggested we need a European alliance, right? You got to marry one of these sisters from Germany's Duke of Cleves. So there's Anne and there's Amelia. So what he does is Henry requests a portrait of both of these women to be sent to him. So he gets Amelia and he gets Anne, and he actually looks at it and he's like, Anne looks better. He actually thought she was more flattering, right, of the two. But then when Anne arrives in England in 1540, he's shocked. He's like, wow, you look nothing like your painting. So he actually tried to stop the wedding from happening. But the arrangement itself, like the political aspect of the wedding, had got so far up to that point that he had no choice. So he marries her on January 6, 1540. And she arrived there 5 days prior. Like, he literally only knew her barely knew her 5 days. And he was automatically not attracted to her. He was like, I want nothing to do with one. And she's actually called historically as the ugly wife. I mean, that's kind of mean to be remembered as that.
Yeah, and she wasn't well educated either, right? He really didn't like that. That was another big thing.
He ended this 6 months later. Basically, he has annulment. I mean, he's just like, yeah, there's a settlement. Like, she gets a nice settlement. Go live in peace. I think she gets a title as king's sister or something like that. And she like lives for another 15, 17 years or
She
something.
lived went all the way to
57.
see Mary actually coronated as queen.
Yeah.
Coronation.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you got for us? What do you got for us?
All
How are you going to debunk everything that we just said?
No, you got
everything.
that was awesome.
Throw it all out.
Some other things I'm going to throw in there. So, although he was in mourning for Jane, I think he actually wore clothing like the traditional the black colors and so forth. He only wore that for a year, but it took him 2 years to get married. But a month after Jane dies, he had already put out there that let's start looking for a wife. So because the process took so long, could have been the reason why there was such a gap, or is it because he really loved her? Well, we don't know. But there were other suitors. He was originally going after Catholic wives, but it got to the point where his advisors were like, that's a terrible idea. Like, you're already pissed off the Pope. What are you thinking here? You can't go back. And some of them were related to Catherine, the first wife that he was seeking, or there was a lot of interties that he was avoiding. So he ends up with Anne of Cleves, and he sees the portrait, and you're right, she's pretty good looking. Okay. I mean, Holbein painted her. It's like the expert master painter at that point. So it's not like somebody that's missing stuff. He was having other things. He was very picky about characteristics. And this could be
Hans, right? Hans Holbein,
yeah,
the younger. Yep.
the younger. But he was even having what does their body look like in specific detail, getting sent back and forth, over these 2 years. So here's Anne. She shows up, they meet each other, she pulls the veil back, and the meet and greet, we're about to get married. And he's like, oh man, you look as ugly as a mare, pretty much. You look like a horse.
They call it a Flanders mare or something, right?
Yeah,
it's not nice.
No, that's just somebody's supposed to marry.
Yeah, we're supposed to get married, and the first thing you say to me is you look at me repulsed, and you say I'm as ugly as a horse. That's awesome.
I don't like Henry VIII. He's not nice.
He ends up after he couldn't consummate it. She was too ugly. She was unattractive. Yeah. Now,
and that's why he was able to get annulled, because they never consummated the marriage.
Also,
she went along with it. Yeah.
No evidence, but he was claiming that she was already betrothed to somebody else also, back in the German states. So you had that kind of going in his favor too. But the new theory is that he has already had how many wives? And there was already 15, I think it was about 15 pregnancies that those 3 wives have gone through. So he's very familiar with a woman that's also, gone through childbirth and how it changes your body and so forth. And it could have been a scandal that was, he was saving her from, that he found out after the fact that she might have had a baby out of wedlock before their marriage. Ooh. And saved her reputation and the alliance between pretty much the German states, the Protestant nations, and England. So you still had that political alliance without the humiliation and embarrassment on behalf of all of the families. Because he then puts her up and into really nice housing. He pays
she gets 2 houses, I think, right? And a really generous allowance.
She is living the bachelorette life that people wanted to live back then. She also, she had people that the love interests, but she never got married to any of them. And apparently her and the king were still really good friends, and he would invite her over as the guest of honor every once in a while. So, I mean, again, this is something that is a newer development. It's still a theory, but it does kind of connect some of the dots with some of the actions. Let me just say you're too ugly, instead of saying hey, you end ruining your complete reputation if she did have a child out of wedlock. So there you have it. Something new.
So that moves us to her 5th out of 6 wives, and that's Catherine Howard. She's actually the first cousin of Anne, right? Anne B. Yeah. First Anne. And also lady in waiting for the for
Again,
Anne.
they all know each other. Well, not all of them, but like a lot of them, they
A
know
lot
each
of
other. They're
them.
kind of this inner circle type of stuff, right?
But this is
Absolutely.
interesting too because he marries Catherine Howard in 1540, which makes him like 50, basically almost 50 years old, and Catherine is like 19 at the time.
Yep. Yep.
And they said she was very attractive, lively, like basically like he saw her and he was like, all right, like this is my new queen. Um, and they said, she liked the company actually of younger men, and she was like super flirtatious, which kind of becomes her undoing later on because the rumors start to really accumulate that like, was she really a virgin before she married the king? Like, even though she's 19, back then people got married at like 15. So that's kind of what is the ultimate downfall for Catherine Howard. Rose, he was like in love with her because like she was like his
Well, he
toy
said
sister.
he like indulged her every whim and stuff like that. He was basically enamored with her for at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, she made him feel young again, right? Because he used to do all of this fun stuff and flirt and have all these relationships and go pretty much do what he wants. And part of him probably wanted to feel attracted to somebody after his failed marriage with Anne. And she gave him that attention in public, in front of people, to the point where some of his friends were like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Like,
but he's
um,
also like this at this time. He's already overweight. He's already unable to walk when he's married to her.
Yeah, he's
She's
like
like
pushing.
this exactly. She's just like super young, 19-year-old woo party,
Yeah,
and he's like,
and he's over 400 pounds with a 54-inch waist, right?
yeah,
Like
mhm.
like
it's not. I don't think it's what she envisioned herself to be with. But he's the king.
he's the
Yeah.
king.
And she very much was having affairs where there is proof, and she didn't even deny it towards the end. She's just like, I rather be this person's mistress than your wife, in so many words, right before she's executed.
Man.
So and that's definitely a message to send to the king.
Well, but
Yeah, he
also
just
this is interesting because no children, right? She's the only
Mhm.
one. They were married for almost a year and produced no children, which is crazy. And again, because she was cheating on him, eventually she's accused of treason, adultery. I wonder if he got the same person to behead Catherine Howard as he did his other wife.
I
it's
never
actually
got
interesting.
never found confirmation of that, and I
That'd be
also
interesting.
don't think her execution went as clean as Anne's did,
Yeah,
for whatever
crazy.
reason.
All right, that brings us to the final one that actually outlived him, right? Based on my research.
Yes,
All right, so what do we know about
Catherine.
Catherine Parr? The last one, the most
Last one.
influential, supposedly, in making sure that not even about, but like there's everywhere I read that she's the reason why we had Mary and Elizabeth later on. I mean, that's what I
Yes.
read, right?
Catherine's like the intellectual wife, right? Like on that level of, it's not necessarily your raging hormones and the attractiveness, but like this is, we could sit down and maybe have tea. I'm not sure what he preferred, to be honest, and just talk. Like do that like debate. But Catherine had to be careful because she did have a lot of opinions, and if she overreached, I mean, that really wasn't a woman's place to be spouting out your opinions to the king, especially even if you're married. But it wasn't her first husband, and she's older, and she knows, this is something where even if I don't want to marry the king, I'm not really in a position to deny him the marriage. And she saw it for what it was. But she does push the education of the daughters and Edward and so forth, like making sure that, kind of repairing it like Jane was working on.
Yeah. Also, supposedly, I mean, it's not supposedly. It's pretty obvious that he trusted her so much that when he goes to war, doesn't he appoint her like his successor, basically, right, Queen Regent?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
he
so
was a
he's like, look, if
military
anything
type.
happens to me, she's boss. Like, that was a big. Another thing that was interesting, like when, which I was like, I guess they did it normally, but when he died at 55, she was allowed to keep all her gowns and jewels and reside in one of his castles, and apparently, like that was like a big deal. I don't know. I guess they normally threw them out. Like if the kings died, what like what did they do? Like go home? I don't know.
It depends on who was in power next.
I guess.
It can either grant you places to live. If it was a dying wish of the kings, they could say, hey, you can keep stuff, or you could be completely thrown out pretty much of the castle, similar to Elizabeth of York, right? Going back to Henry's mother, sorry, she wasn't always living in the palace. And the thing is, there was a period of time where Henry's grandmother actually was kicked out of the palace, going all the way back to grandma status, where she was not allowed to be in the palace or anywhere near the royal family for a very long time. So that's going a little bit further back in history. But yeah, you can meet a total happiness and everybody's family, and we kind of, support each other still, or you're ousted and peace out. It really depends. But Catherine Parr also was caught with a prayers book. And again, even though you would be, as a Protestant, be able to interpret the Bible and so forth on your own, without, somebody from the cloth, for lack of better words, Henry is not happy about this, and it's something that could have her potentially executed because it'll make him look really bad, and it's breaking some of the rules that are in place. And he kind of just says, like, calls her out on it, but looks the other way. And it could have been because he was too tired and old or sick, or just had enough of all the drama throughout his life, that he gives her a pass on that one, as far as we know.
And also, only one last thing before we finish up with her, she actually married again afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? She's like, all right, that one's done. Let's move on. But the last marriage apparently only lasted a year because then she passed away. But yeah, she was just like, all right, I'm a traveler, like, yeah. Where to next?
And he was related to Jane Seymour.
Was she? No.
Oh, the husband, yeah.
Really?
The husband for Henry was related to John Seymour. I mean, Jane Seymour, not John. I think his name might have been John. But
you learn something new every day. All right, so before we're done with these 6 wives, that was an interesting course of events there. Does anyone have any like funny, fun facts about any of this, or just King Henry VIII? I mean, the one I found is that he was a hoarder. They said like super lavish lifestyle, intense desire to just like hold on to things. They said he owned approximately 50 palaces at the time of his death. 6,500 handguns, 70 ships, just his own, 78 flutes. That was a little odd. And like 5 sets of bagpipes. Like that was like his personal belongings. What else? Also, apparently, like his last words may have been monks, 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 because he was like having these visions. He was delusional, and they said his eyes were like opening and closing and rolling back of his head, and he started like muttering the words monks, like the monks were coming after. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't really find any other things that were like. I think his whole life was kind of interesting. So
yeah, it was mostly the interesting facts. I just talked about how he was like
wives,
obsessed with. Yeah, that was his main. He would always just eat strawberries like constantly.
Good to know.
That's a big thing.
They said he may have had a blood disorder.
I saw that. That might be why he couldn't produce males. The Kell disease, something like that.
Yeah, and he was convinced that there was nothing wrong with him because he could have male heirs with his mistresses. So why not with his actual wives? Which, they didn't really know about the Punnett Square back in the day either. But that's something where the wives would get blamed for not having control over the gender of the child, which we probably should have mentioned at the beginning, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's a fun one anyway. Well, what else we have?
Catherine had a monkey, Catherine of Aragon, which I think is pretty cool, right? Like, give a monkey living in
okay, that is kind of
funny too, right?
That is
like,
kind of funny.
Not only do I have a pet monkey, but like paint me and the monkey together.
Yeah, why not?
Right.
How'd they get the monkey to stay still that long?
I don't know.
The things we think about, right? 500 years later, I wonder how they got that monkey to stay still.
How'd they get that monkey?
And the one thing, like Tom, you brought this up before, like his waist size was 54.
Well, he ate. They said that on his life, he probably ate approximately 5,000 calories a day.
Whoa!
Like he would eat birds, like peacocks and swans. That was like some of his favorite. Like every day, bring me another swan, bring me another peacock, and he would just drink. Sometimes they said 70 pints of ale a week. Tons of white rhyme, sweetened with sugar. Like this guy, because he couldn't move around anymore because of injuries, so he pretty much just stayed in the palace and just ate. They said most times 13 courses of food every day.
Jeez,
that's a lot of food.
Like around the clock.
That is a lot of food. I know. I
That's
mean,
what led to his death.
but when he became king, right? He became king in 1509. He was only 17, and they said he was like super fit and skinny, which we kind of started off with. They said that initially his waist was like a 30 to 32 before it ballooned to 50.
Yeah, then he just, well, when you're eating 5,000 calories a day, you're not moving.
That might do it.
All right.
He also was apparently a pretty decent musician. They said he could literally you could give him notes to something and he'll just play music. Like he knew.
Suppose he had a good memory too. Like that's why he didn't like doing the state government stuff, right? But he would do it like later when he was younger, later on in the day after he did all his other stuff in the morning hunting. And they said he just has a really good memory. He was able to remember things that really helped him to govern, at least at first. But obviously, with time, that fades.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just want to mention that although he has these mistresses, it's not anything out of the norm where he had like an exuberant amount of mistresses compared to other.
They said he was nothing compared to some of the other ones.
Like the French king. Oh man, that's a whole nother podcast. But
she said it.
She belongs here. Okay. Sorry.
You know how well we do on this one.
No, you're doing great. That's funny.
But yeah, he's and really when you think about this, like it's a really revolutionary time in history where you started a different religion practically, right? Like a new faction. And eventually, Edward's going to be his successor, but he also has in line that his daughters are then going to take the throne after Edward should something happen. Yeah. I mean, Edward screwed that whole thing up right before he died, but that's
another podcast.
Another podcast.
Anyway, this was awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. You clearly know a lot more about this than we do. So we appreciate your knowledge and your willingness to expertise on this. Is good.
Well, we're not like messing anything up because
No, are you crazy? This is awesome. No, it's great stuff.
There's nothing to mess up. We just
you got two of us here. It only goes up from here. Anyone we bring in, they just improve this podcast. There's no question about it. So, to our listeners, guys, thank you so much again for Danielle. Thank you so much for coming in, and everyone out there. Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. And we are always here. If you want to email some questions or anything else, you can find us at historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. You can also find us on social media. Just look for History Teachers Talking Podcast. But anyway, I guess that's it. So again, thanks again, Danielle.
Thank you. This has been fun, guys.
Awesome. Thanks. And enjoy, everyone. We'll see you guys next week.
Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.